I'm going to go through this quickly because I have only 20 minutes and I think I have 30-something slides. So I want to just start with some facts which I think that you've heard again and again, particularly if you were at our adolescent meeting. But 1 in 5 people worldwide are adolescents, and 85% of them are living in the developing countries and low-income countries. As you know better than I, Uganda has one of the youngest worldwide population with 45 million people, and 1 out of 4 is an adolescent. And unfortunately, without Sabrina, I'm not sure that training would have come to where it is, which was just much more improved because of her commitment and dedication. But still, there's somewhat limited training and infrastructure available to address the healthcare needs. And again, 53% of the population is under 18 years of age, so it's staggering to me. So facts, we know adolescence is defined at age 10 to 19 years. And I think we all know that it's a developmental period with a significant amount of growth, physical, cognitive, psychosocial growth. During the period, like, what is the mission of adolescence? And if I had to say, just through my experience, it's sort of to figure out who you are and go through those early, middle, late stages to be able to function as an independent adult. And in order to do that, you have to practice things, right? You have to put things on, try them on for size, and see what works for you. Blossom into, hopefully, an individual, an adult who has a good ego, who has a good sense of self, who can contribute to family, community, and a variety of settings, and themselves bring up other children and contribute to the ongoing communities in the world. What happens in adolescence, right? People in adolescence compared to child have improved strength, speed, reaction time, mental reasoning abilities, much more resistance to infection. We know that. Yet, again, a staggering statistic, overall morbidity, mortality rates increase up to 300% from childhood to adolescence. And worldwide, injury, suicide, interpersonal violence are among the leading causes of death, and certainly communicable diseases like HIV and others contribute, but I'm focusing on these for a specific reason, which you will see why. Adolescence, again, worldwide. I have to say, when I first came to Uganda, because all these, which you can read yourself, potential risk-taking engagements that teens are involved in are incredibly prevalent in the States. And when I came to Uganda, I initially made the assumption that, well, they must be true here too, without doing my due diligence. Then I thought, well, gee, maybe teens aren't doing these things in Uganda. And then with Sabrina, we went ahead and looked and found out, of course, teens are vulnerable to the same things in Uganda as they are in the States. So why is this? Why are teens at risk of this increased morbidity? I would love to have more time and talk about what's happening with the adolescent brain, but I really just have this one slide. So areas of the brain that are associated with executive function and the ability to evaluate risk and reward are the last regions of the brain to mature. So we used to think that gray matter was done developing by 18 months. We now know there's another surge of gray matter development in adolescence, starting around age 11. And it's a parabolic curve. So it increases and then it's pruned, much like skeletal muscle, to only contain areas that are important to you as an individual. And that goes on into the 20s. So the brain is certainly very malleable. There's also increase in connectivity through the white matter. So as the executive functioning is maturing, it's not completely connected to the areas of impulse and emotion until even the 30s. So when we ask teens who are 14 or 15 to make good, healthy decisions, they're not necessarily in heated situations able to do that. They don't think they're invincible. They know that if they have sex without a condom, as long as they got the education, that their risk of pregnancy and disease. And if you did testing with 14, 15-year-olds and adults, they would have the same results in a cold cognitive setting. But once in a heated setting, that connectivity and that ability to make decisions in their best interest evaporates. So there's increased risk-taking and reward-seeking behaviors in adolescence, and this is true of all primates. Nobody would leave the natal nest where everything is taken care of unless there was something a hormone that wasn't propelling us to do that. And dopamine release in adolescence is much higher. Vasopressin, oxytocin, bonding hormones for bonding with peer groups increase. And all of that needs to happen so people can want to go out and experience on their own, likely, if we believe in Darwin, in the service of procreation. So there is likely a biologic basis for increased risk-taking. And I think the thing that's hard for a lot of people with adolescence is there's a discordance between this emotional, psychosocial, and cognitive growth. And physically, teens look far more mature than they are cognitively. So we expect them to behave as little adults. But do they? No. And then what do? We wag a finger. Does anybody think that wagging a finger actually is helpful in changing behavior? It actually just reinforces that, well, you can't trust the adult community because all they're going to do is tell us that we've been naughty and punish us. So this is a kind of interesting graph that just documents and exactly what I said, is that these limbic regions, these emotion centers, have a surge of development in adolescence, and you can see there's a gap between the prefrontal regions, the executive functioning regions, and the limbic regions. So teens cannot help it. It doesn't mean that some teens don't go through adolescence relatively seamlessly, and some act out in a variety of ways that can put them in harm's way. But it is healthy to try things on. And in fact, when someone comes to my clinic and a parent says, I have no problem with my teen, they never go out, they're always with grandma and me, they take us everywhere, they have no friends, but they are friends with only their parents. They may not put themselves in harm's way, but how are they going to live independently? So people need to take risks. You need to take risks in applying to medical school, right? You need to take risks in a variety of ways to figure out who you are and what you're capable of doing and want to do. So I should have asked you this question without answering it, but is adolescence a unique phase of life? Yes or no? Right, it's not, which is why in the States in the 1950s, this doctor came along and said, teens really need a doctor of their own. That pediatricians are amazing, but there's often the relationship between the pediatrician and the parent, or a healthcare provider of their own, I should say, between the parent and the pediatrician, and you're talking about the child in front of the child. And to shift then into saying, now we need to speak to your daughter or your son privately and explain that they need to now have some time alone and the parent needs to leave the room is very challenging. So really creating a relationship with a teen independent of a parent, or in a different way I should say, independent of a parent, is essential. So we know adolescents are an at-risk population. It's really no different than a 2-year-old. And I really take offense when people say terrible twos. Are they terrible, or are they doing what they're supposed to do? Right? They're supposed to be exploring. And if they're not exploring, we think maybe they have autism or something wrong with them. And it's the same thing here. But the difference is a 2-year-old is never left alone. And a teen, it would be embarrassing if your parent came with you everywhere at age 14 and 15, right? You would feel like you don't want to go because none of your friends have that. So it's developmentally appropriate for teens to separate from parents and to develop a private self, right? That's the first phase. But they still need and want adults for guidance, but non-judgmental guidance. Then they would benefit from a provider that they can call their own, as I just said, and build a relationship where they feel non-judged and also that they can trust the provider. Now, if you have a provider who says, listen, you can tell me what sort of things you're doing. Have you started having sexual intercourse? Are you not doing as well in school because you're feeling depressed? Or have you tried certain drugs or alcohol? But I'm going to go tell your parent. Would teens tell? No. So it's very important to build trust of adolescence and to appropriate, this is a whole different talk, but explain to parents that you would like to see your teen to be a resource to the family, not to replace them in any way, but it takes a village to raise a child. And since teens develop some independence and grow into a more private self, not all of them may be turning to their parents. And if they don't have other adults to turn to help them think about the decisions they're making, who are they going to turn to? Right, and do peers necessarily have the information? I can tell you stories that would make your hair stand on end, and I'll tell you one now. I have a teen who wanted to have sex during her period, so she asked her friend what to do. Her friend said, put a kitchen sponge in, and then you can have it will absorb the blood. And so I saw her 3 weeks later, and the kitchen sponge was still there. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we're hoping there's an adult community who can share correct information. And that can only be done in a confidential, non-judgmental way. And I think we have to remember that if we're having a judgment, we have to step out of the room, take a breath, and if we can't continue interfacing with that teen in a non-judgmental way, then we need to refer on. You know, if I see somebody who has a significant heartworm, or I know my limitations and I refer them to cardiologists, it's no different here. And strength-based interactions are important. We look for problems as doctors, but it's wonderful to say, whatever it is, you're doing well in school, you have a wonderful sense of style, you have such a lovely demeanor, something that makes somebody feel you're recognizing positive qualities in your personality. So what happened in Uganda? I've given you sort of my pitch as to why adolescent healthcare is important, is that when I met Sabrina, she was working completely independently, giving, as I hope I'm accurately representing this, but 2 hours of education to the medical students and the postgraduates in adolescent health, and taking care and wonderful care of adolescents in Baylor's clinic. But what was happening to all the other adolescents, the inpatient adolescents, the other adolescents in the community? Where did they go? So there seemed to be limited training, and then again doing due diligence. It seemed that from Guttmacher and other incredibly inclusive surveys that teens felt that there is not only limited providers, or adolescent-specific centers for their healthcare or reproductive healthcare in particular, but they were greeted with a lot of judgment. And I think everybody was well-intended, but to say, you are 14, you should not be having sex, go back to school where you belong, and come back here when you're married. Thinking you're doing a good job, but in fact not effectively engaging the teen in being able to protect themselves. And the inpatient wards, right? End at 12, cribs in the room, and then you're with an adult when you're 13 and need a bed next to maybe a 72-year-old and an 80-year-old. So it's very unwelcoming. So Sabrina and I said, well, maybe we can begin to work together. And I think I have learned more coming to your country and seeing what heroes everybody is and how many hats people wear. So there was never the sense of coming and let's me impose upon you how to do adolescent health. Really has been a bi-directional exchange with our residents coming, and I can show you some things that we've done. Sabrina and others coming to our clinic to see how we do things, and sort of all of us learning, because we're a global world and there shouldn't be this separation. So I think bi-directional learning exchange has been the most wonderful thing for me, my colleagues, and our trainees. But Sabrina really very passionately wanted to build capacity in the area of adolescent health. So I took her lead, and we wanted to scale up educational experiences, create research opportunities, and of course develop one big family really and long-lasting relationships. So this is a lot. I'm going to quickly run through it. We have residents come, and they have had wonderful experiences. Not one of them hasn't come back expressing what a wonderful culture you have and how much they've learned and how they've integrated it into their own practice, the things they've learned. And with clinical work at Malago, community work, you don't have to read this, but we work very closely with Naguru and delivered presentations, and then they come back and share their work at Columbia, which is, as you know, where I'm from, so that others gain insight. And then when Dr. Chiguli was chair and we had a new chair, Dr. Stanberry, both were very interested in creating a memorandum of understanding between the departments of pediatrics and building adolescent medicine with, again, bi-directional visits from faculty, determinations of what research projects could be done, and capacity building. So we started with workshops 9 years ago, and core faculty from Columbia, as well as core faculty interested in adolescent health here, delivered these workshops, and Sabrina identified people who were very passionate about adolescent health. So again, I don't want to have to read this, but we had workshops in 2010, 11, and 12. And then the themes were integrating psychosocial development into the clinical evaluation of the adolescent, care of the adolescent and young adult male. We have at Columbia somebody who's very passionate and spearheading male health in the States. We're not where we want to be, and it's very, very new there in the States as well. And then integrating psychosocial development into the clinical evaluation. This grew into taking this template of workshops and making them portable to other settings. And they were delivered in the Dominican Republic, which is in the Caribbean, and actually in Colombia, the majority of the population is Dominican. So it's a nice relationship we have with the DR itself. And then in Ethiopia, we had some participants in one of our workshops here who wanted us to deliver the workshop in Ethiopia. So Sabrina and other colleagues from Columbia went. And then we've done conferences, which some of you may know. And you can look at the SAHU website, the Society of Adolescent Health in Uganda website, and find the presentations and the titles and information about the workshops. But the latest one, which we just finished yesterday, was prioritizing the response to adolescent health and development. Again, with my shout out to Sabrina, she opened a clinic for non-HIV positive teens at Malago. Do all of you know that clinic? Yeah, so it really is a model clinic, even with somewhat limited resources and only being able to function half a day, which usually runs into a day because of the number of the clients who want to come. But 3,500 about unique clients have been there with multiple repeat visits, services for 10 to 19-year-olds, and it really is exactly modeled and similar to what we do in at Columbia, which is comprehensive, I can't stress enough, confidential care, including mental health services, reproductive health care, school health, nutrition, and immunization updates. Many volunteers, which is wonderful, and we're hoping to find more funding to help expand that clinic. And I'm glad to hear you know, because I understand it's a teaching site now for all of you to learn how to best take care of teens. We've done research projects, and again, I'm not going to go through this, but the medical students have come from Columbia, and we've had that since 2015 and worked over the summer, our summer, which is July and August, to do some research, and one of them, the research projects, has actually been published. Quality improvement projects Sabrina did with our QI Maven at Columbia. We did some teleconferences here on how to do QI projects, and Sabrina did a hepatitis B QI project, which was unfortunately interrupted because of the absence of available vaccine. And the Society of Adolescent Health Uganda, have you heard of that? Raise your hand if you've heard of it. No? Well, nice, so many of you have. It's a nice site to visit because it, I think, will give you a nice aerial view of the things that I'm kind of touching on now. But it was created in 2012. It was registered as an NGO in Uganda in 2015 and is currently being re-registered. And it, as you might imagine, promotes comprehensive adolescent health growth and development through knowledge dissemination, research advocacy, and affiliation with other societies and bodies involved in adolescent health. And here's the website, sahu.uj. We have a few, but nonetheless active members. There's a membership fee, which will be adjusted if students and residents want to join, and provides technical assistance to the Ministry of Health. We have a semi-annual newsletter that's topic-driven that also can be found on the website, and that started in 2013. There are multiple topics we discuss. We urge people to submit to the newsletter. In the newsletter, you can see where you can submit work that you're doing that you think is something you want to publicize, and Sabrina distributes it electronically to well over 1,000 people worldwide, but primarily in Africa. And funding has been an issue, but the Departments of Pediatric at Columbia has funded primarily the conference, and we've had a few private donors as well as the American Academy of Pediatrics we applied and received a grant from. So what are the tips for success? Frequent communication, as I said, bi-directional exchange is key. Creating working opportunities. Sabrina and I have presented at all of the societies listed there, some in Africa, some in the States. Having institutional support. Dr. MEPI has been remarkably supportive of continuing this collaboration, as has the faculty on my end, team involvement. But I think the main thing is commitment and passion. A person really has to want to help build something, and I think Sabrina and I found that in each other. The challenges, as with everyone, is funding, time difference, and sometimes poor internet connection. We want to try to expand the clinic to more days, but again, funding and space and staffing is an issue. But we know we will get there. So we will continue to hold these annual conferences, and you're welcome. I'm sure they're well publicized to attend next year. Our main mission now is to build SAHU, and we're getting some funding to actually make it operational and have a administrator and a space where people can come and learn more about it. And then, of course, over time, supporting the clinic and strengthening meaningful collaborations with other countries within the regions. So, research, we're in the midst of applying for an R21, R33, building mentoring opportunities. We've had Dorothy Gingo, who's one of the postgraduates, came to Columbia for a month. We will be sending residents and students to be mentored by Sabrina here, and we hope to create that continuing relationship and ultimately get a health education curriculum and empowerment tools for adolescents, and extend our work to parent education, although I must applaud Sabrina yet again that she's done a number of workshops with parents, but we want to improve that. So, Wabalenyo, did I say it right? And thank you to my faculty at Columbia, Melissa, who's been a recent fabulous supporter and contributor, of course, Dr. MEPI, the Departments of Pediatrics, and Malago and a girl. Well, thank you very much.